What's the biggest threat to our frosty friends up north that we call polar bears? Climate change? Illegal poachers? Killer whales? Nope, none of those. The biggest threat to polar bears is the Snickers candy bar, and here's why. The Snickers candy bar is made by Mars Candy Company. Mars Candy Company, better known as Mars Wrigley, is the largest candy company in the world, creating more candy than any other corporation on the planet. Obviously, a company that produces as much candy as Mars Wrigley needs an enormous amount of cocoa beans to produce the abundance of chocolate for their many different candy bars. The largest producer of cocoa beans in the world is the Ivory Coast in West Africa. With around 60% of the world's cocoa beans coming from only two countries in West Africa, the Ivory Coast and Ghana. Sadly, a large portion of the labor used to grow and harvest these cocoa beans is unpaid, or in the best case scenario, extremely underpaid labor. This is a common occurrence in African countries and can be primarily blamed on the lack of infrastructure because of a lackluster government and economy, both of which are in thanks to the massive colonialization of the continent of Africa decades ago by European civilizations. The Ivory Coast officially gained its independence from France on August 7, 1960, almost 60 years after it was first taken under French West African control in 1904. Once the Ivory Coast gained its rightful independence from France, it was left without much infrastructure of substance because France had controlled the political and economic environment in their country. So once they left, they had essentially start from scratch from the ruins of a forced civilization. The exporting of cocoa and other goods from the Ivory Coast leads to the massive amount of deforestation. Deforestation is one of the largest contributors to climate change on the planet. Deforestation is the immense cutting down or burning of trees and forests, usually for the charcoal that can be made from the trees, or in the case of the Ivory Coast, to clear more land for more infrastructure for the country. The world is run by money, and the people in power in the Ivory Coast understand that the more land they can attribute to growing, harvesting, and processing the cacao with more factories means the more money that they can make. Deforestation is one of the largest contributors to climate change on the planet because trees are vital to keeping the planet from warming beyond a normal rate. This is because one of the most abundant greenhouse gases in the world is carbon dioxide, which comes from overpopulating areas, the burning of fossil fuels, and many more ways. All plants absorb carbon dioxide in the air and release oxygen in return, which is what we need to breathe. The bigger the plant, the more densely populated the forest that the plant is in, or in an ecosystem, the more carbon dioxide is absorbed from the atmosphere, which means there's less carbon dioxide to go into our atmosphere to further along the process of climate change and global warming. When the process of global warming exponentially grows because of negligent habits like deforestation, the planet warms. One of the biggest results of the planet warming that we hear about is the melting of the ice caps in the south and northern poles of our planet. This causes havoc for many different reasons. But for this video specifically, we'll talk about the extreme havoc it has in the wildlife that lives on these polar ice caps. Specifically, the polar bear. The polar bears rely on these ice caps to be able to hunt, sleep, and so they don't need to be swimming every second of every single day. There's a lot of cases of polar bears drowning from exhaustion because they do not have any area like an ice cap like they usually use to be able to rest on to stop swimming. Climate change has had a major impact on polar bears in more ways than one. The biggest impact it's had on them is pushing them further south into fishing villages closer to people than they really need to be. It pushes them more south than they've ever been in history, causing them to get mixed up with grizzly bears and other wildlife that they should not be interacting with. At the end of the day, if nothing drastically changes, the polar bear as we know it will be extinct, arguably within our lifetime. This is for many different reasons, some of which are more to blame than others. But at the end of the day, you can't have the conversation about the polar bear going extinct without mentioning its biggest reason, the humble Snickers bar. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe as I have many more exciting videos on the way. And while you're here, feel free to click on one of the two videos on your screen right now and give them a watch, as I'm sure you'll love those videos too if you like this video. Have a great day and stay pondering.